I came home from my military deployment a week early, hoping to surprise my family for Thanksgiving. Instead, I found my 6-year-old daughter locked in our freezing garage, her arms covered in dark bruises. The note my husband left on the kitchen counter simply read, "We took everyone to Aspen. She was never family, deal with her." He had no idea that the crumpled envelope my little girl handed me was about to cost him his freedom, his wealth, and his entire future. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you believe that a mother will burn the world down to protect her child. My name is Aliyah. I am 33 years old and serve as an active-duty cybersecurity specialist for the military. For the past 6 months, I had been deployed overseas running counterintelligence operations and counting down the days until I could hold my daughter Layla again. DeAndre and I had been married for exactly 2 years. He worked as an investment broker, or so he liked to project, wearing custom-tailored suits and driving imported cars around our upscale Atlanta suburb. I genuinely thought we were building a solid life together, blending our family. Layla was my biological daughter from a previous relationship, but before our wedding, DeAndre had promised to love and protect her as his own. His mother, Yvonne, was a prominent fixture at her local megachurch, constantly obsessed with high society appearances and wealth. I always knew she looked down on my military career and considered Layla an outsider who tainted her perfect family image, but I never could have imagined the absolute depths of her malice. The crisp November wind bit at my face as my rideshare pulled away from my sprawling suburban driveway. I lugged my heavy tactical duffel bag up the stone front steps, a genuine smile breaking across my exhausted face for the first time in half a year. It was the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, and I had pulled every string imaginable with my commanding officers to get clearance to fly home early. I pressed my thumb to the biometric scanner on our custom smart lock, expecting the familiar chime of entry. A solid red light flashed, indicating my access was denied. Frowning, I punched in my manual keypad backup code. The screen blinked, displaying invalid entry. A cold, hard knot formed in the pit of my stomach. DeAndre knew my deployment dates were fluid, yet the entire security system of my own home had been completely reconfigured to lock me out. Fortunately, physical security barriers are child's play when your daily job involves penetrating highly secure foreign digital infrastructure. I dropped my bag, pulled my specialized decryption tablet from my side pocket, and connected it directly to the smart lock's diagnostic port. I bypassed the primary firewall and rewrote the entry protocols in under 60 seconds. The heavy oak front door clicked open. I stepped into the grand foyer, dropping my tablet back into my bag. The silence inside the house was absolute and suffocating. I called out for DeAndre and Layla, my voice echoing off the vaulted ceilings. No response came. The digital thermostat in the hallway was turned completely off, making the interior of the house feel like an absolute icebox. Panic, a sharp and jagged thing, began to claw fiercely at my chest. I drew my sidearm from my shoulder holster out of pure military instinct, clearing the ground floor, room by room. The living room was immaculate. The kitchen was spotless. I ran up the stairs, taking them 2 at a time. DeAndre's walk-in closet was half empty, his expensive winter gear missing. I burst into Layla's bedroom and my breath hitched. Her door was wide open, her bed perfectly made but stripped of all her favorite stuffed animals. My heart hammered violently against my ribs as I sprinted back down the hallway toward the utility rooms. That is when I heard it. A faint, muffled whimpering coming from the attached garage. I threw my entire weight against the heavy fire door leading to the garage, bursting into the dark space. The air inside was brutally cold, dropping well below freezing due to the harsh Atlanta cold snap. The concrete floor was slick with condensation. In the far corner, wedged tightly between a stack of heavy moving boxes and a deflated spare tire, was a tiny lump huddled under a thin, scratchy moving blanket. I dropped my weapon and slid to my knees on the freezing concrete, pulling the coarse fabric back. Layla was trembling violently, her lips a pale, terrifying shade of blue, her teeth chattering so hard she could not even form words. My sweet, quiet 6-year-old girl looked up at me with wide, terrified eyes. "Mommy," she whimpered, her voice barely a scrape of sound in the freezing air. I gathered her immediately into my arms, stripping off my heavy, insulated military coat and wrapping it tightly around her small, shivering frame. "I am here, baby," I promised, pressing my face against her freezing cheek, holding her close to my chest to transfer my body heat. "Mommy has you." I carried her quickly into the house, kicking the garage door shut behind me. I marched to the hallway panel, turned the thermostat up to maximum heat, and carried her to the living room sofa. I wrapped her in thick fleece blankets from the hall closet, vigorously rubbing her hands to restore circulation. As I lifted her arm to wrap another blanket around her shoulders, I felt her wince sharply in pain. I gently pushed back the sleeves of her thin cotton sweater. Dark, angry bruises shaped perfectly like adult fingers were wrapped tightly around her upper arms. The sight of those violent marks flipped a switch deep inside my soul, extinguishing any remaining warmth or loyalty I held for the family I had married into. A cold, calculated, absolute rage took its place. "Tell me exactly what happened, baby," I said, keeping my voice perfectly steady to hide the fury boiling in my veins. Layla sniffled, burying her face deep into my shoulder. "Grandma Yvonne came over yesterday morning," she stammered, her tiny voice breaking. "She was yelling at DeAndre about packing the bags for the mountains. I asked if I could bring my coloring books, and Grandma grabbed my arms really hard. The mental image of my mother-in-law putting her manicured hands on my child made my vision blur with violent anger." "What did she say to you, Layla?" I asked, stroking her hair. "She dragged me to the garage." Layla cried softly, holding tightly onto my shirt. "She told DeAndre she was not going to let another man's burden ruin their first-class mountain trip. She said I did not belong with the real family and locked the door. She said Aunt Ashley laughed and told them I would just ruin their wealthy ski photos anyway. DeAndre just watched them do it. He let them lock me in the dark. The sheer cruelty of leaving an innocent child in a freezing garage while flying off to a luxury vacation was unfathomable. My husband stood by and watched his mother physically assault and abandon my daughter, just to appease her and his entitled white sister-in-law, Ashley. I rocked Layla gently, murmuring promises of safety and retribution while my mind rapidly shifted into full combat mode. I needed to get warm water for her. I walked into the kitchen, grabbing a glass from the cabinet. That is when I saw it. Sitting dead center on the marble island next to a half-empty bottle of my most expensive imported bourbon was a piece of personalized stationery. I picked it up, recognizing DeAndre's arrogant scrawl immediately. I read the words once, then twice, letting the absolute reality of his betrayal wash over me. "We took everyone to Aspen. She was never family. Deal with her." He had actually written it down. He had boldly documented his own apathy and complete complicity in child abuse. I crumpled the note tightly in my fist. I did not shed a single tear. Crying was a luxury reserved for victims, and I was absolutely no longer a victim. I was a mother preparing for war. I looked down at the heavy ivory paper in my hand. Layla's small, trembling fingers had clutched this crumpled envelope like a lifeline. I gently stroked her natural curls, pushing the hair back from her freezing forehead. The wax seal on the flap is broken. It bears the crest of Apex Alpine Management, a luxury property firm catering exclusively to the ultra-wealthy. Yvonne must have dropped it in her frantic rush to drag my child out of the house. I smoothed the creases of the thick paper against the marble countertop. The document is a final warning of eviction. The client listed is DeAndre. The reason stated is 3 consecutive bounce checks for a holiday lease at the Zenith Lodge in Aspen, Colorado. The property management group is threatening immediate legal action and lockout procedures if the outstanding balance is not wired by Thanksgiving morning. A dry, bitter laugh escapes my throat. DeAndre and Yvonne had been planning this luxury mountain getaway for months. Their entire goal was to impress Ashley. Malik's wife comes from a family that constantly brags about their old money status. Yvonne treats Ashley like royalty, fawning over her country club memberships and designer handbags. Yvonne resents me because I wear combat boots instead of red bottoms. She hates that I am an independent black woman serving in the military instead of a submissive trophy wife sitting in the front pew of her mega church. DeAndre wanted to prove he was just as successful as the men in Ashley's family. He wanted to project the image of a high-rolling investment broker. But DeAndre is a fraud. He leases his cars. He maxes out his credit cards on tailored suits. He does not have the cash for an elite Aspen lodge. He was bouncing checks trying to maintain an illusion while locking my daughter in a garage to hide his shame. I read the property address on the letterhead again. Zenith Lodge. My chest tightens, but not with panic. A slow, sharp smile spreads across my face. It is a smile born of absolute, undeniable power. I carry Layla to the kitchen island. I wrap her securely in 3 thick thermal blankets from the hall closet. I quickly heat up a mug of whole milk on the stove, stirring in dark chocolate. I wrap her small, freezing hands around the warm ceramic mug. "You drink this, baby," I tell her softly, keeping my voice steady and calm. "Mommy has to check on some very important paperwork." I reach into my tactical duffel bag and pull out my military-issued laptop. The machine is encased in heavy black carbon fiber, built to withstand combat zones. It requires a retinal scan to unlock. I press my thumb to the biometric reader and look directly into the camera lens. The screen glows green. I bypass my standard government defense servers and open a secondary, highly encrypted portal. This is the financial fortress I built years ago. When you work in federal cybersecurity, you learn very early that people are the weakest link in any system. I knew DeAndre was reckless with money from the day we married. I knew Yvonne measured a person's worth by the brand of their car and the zip code of their vacations. I never trusted them with my actual wealth. The massive payouts for my private tech patents and the classified government bug bounties I secured were never deposited into our joint accounts. I funneled every single million directly into a blind trust. That trust operates under a private limited liability company that nobody in my family knows about. I navigate through the complex layers of security, authenticating my credentials until I reach the central dashboard of my company. I click on the Real Estate Portfolio tab. A detailed list of high-value properties populates the screen. Right at the top of the list is a stunning $8 million property located in the exclusive snowy peaks of Aspen, the Zenith Lodge. I own it. I bought the estate in cash 2 years ago as a pure investment asset. DeAndre had absolutely no idea. He thought I was just a regular soldier putting my military paychecks into a basic savings account. He thought he was renting a luxury cabin from a faceless corporate management group to flex on his older brother Malik and win the approval of his snobby sister-in-law Ashley. Instead, DeAndre and his mother just broke into my personal estate. They forged financial documents and bounced checks to access a property that I hold the absolute legal deed to. My mother-in-law threw my innocent child into a freezing garage because she thought she was securing her spot in high society. She actually just handed me the keys to her total destruction. I close the laptop with a sharp, forceful snap. There is no time for tears. Crying is a luxury reserved for victims, and I am no longer a victim. The military taught me exactly how to neutralize hostile threats, and right now my husband is the biggest threat to my daughter's safety and my peace of mind. I move through the house with absolute mechanical precision. I grab a single tactical duffel bag. I do not bother packing makeup or evening wear. I pack heavy thermal gear snow boots and the encrypted hard drives containing every financial record I have collected. I walk back into the living room and scoop Layla into my arms. I take my heavy fleece-lined military parka and wrap it completely around her small, shivering body. The thick olive green coat swallows her whole, but it keeps her warm and safe against my chest. "We are going on a trip, baby," I whisper, kissing the top of her head. "We are going to see the snow." I pull out my secure satellite phone and dial a private aviation broker I have kept on retainer for extreme emergencies. My voice is completely devoid of emotion as I authorize a massive wire transfer from my hidden accounts. I need a private charter fueled and ready on the tarmac at the local executive airport. In 45 minutes, I command the dispatcher. Destination is Aspen-Pitkin County Airport. Clear a priority flight path. Do not let anything delay that aircraft. The dispatcher confirms the itinerary immediately and dispatches a black SUV to my address. As I carry Layla out the front door, I pull out my personal cell phone. I open social media to check on my enemies. DeAndre's profile is the very first thing that pops up on my feed. He just posted a fresh picture. He is sitting on a luxurious leather seat inside a private jet holding a crystal flute of expensive champagne. Yvonne is smiling brightly in the background, wearing a ridiculous oversized faux fur coat. Malik and Ashley are clinking glasses next to him, looking incredibly smug. The caption below the photo reads, "Nothing but the best for the family touching down in Aspen to live like kings." I stare at his smiling, arrogant face. He locked my flesh and blood in a concrete box to take those toxic people on a joyride using forged documents. He thinks he won the ultimate prize. He thinks he successfully discarded the scapegoat and stepped into the upper echelon of elite wealth. I lock the front door of my house and walk down the driveway toward the waiting SUV. The harsh Atlanta wind whips around us, but I feel absolutely nothing. A cold, calculating silence settles over my heart. "Enjoy the flight, DeAndre," I say quietly to the glowing screen of my phone. "Because it is the last one you will ever take." The private jet cuts through the night sky with a smooth, quiet hum. Layla is finally asleep on the plush leather sofa across from me, swaddled in thick cashmere blankets. The blue bruising on her small arms is safely hidden beneath the soft fabric, but the image is permanently burned into my retinas. I sit in the dim cabin light with my military-grade laptop open on the polished mahogany table. The cold fury inside me has crystallized into razor-sharp focus. DeAndre thought he could discard us like trash. Now it is time to dismantle his entire existence brick by brick. I pull up the banking portals. DeAndre always thought he was the smartest man in the room, constantly bragging at family cookouts about his supposedly elite investment broker instincts. Yet his password for our primary joint account is simply his own birth year, followed by the word money. It is pathetic. I do not even need my advanced decryption tools for this. I bypass his two-factor authentication by intercepting the SMS token through a basic cellular network exploit. A trick I learned during my first year in cyber warfare training. The screen loads and the blue light illuminates my face. I navigate directly to the primary savings ledger. This was the account where my military deployment paychecks were supposed to be automatically deposited while I was overseas. The balance reads exactly $0.42. He drained it. While I was sleeping in combat boots, eating rations in a classified bunker, and running counterintelligence operations to keep our country safe. My husband systematically bled the account dry. I do not feel panic. In my line of work, panic gets you killed. Instead, I follow the digital breadcrumbs. I execute a tracing algorithm on the outgoing wire transfers from the past 6 months. The data cascades down my screen in bright green text, revealing every single move he made behind my back. I expect to see receipts for his flashy leased cars, his custom Italian suits, and expensive dinners. But the truth is far more pathetic and infuriating. The largest transfers are routed directly to a holding company called Apex Innovations. I run a quick background query on the federal database. Apex Innovations belongs to Malik DeAndre's older brother. Malik is the family golden child who has never held a steady job in his adult life. He calls himself a serial entrepreneur, but every single one of his ventures has gone bankrupt within a year. DeAndre has been quietly funding Malik's latest failed startup, desperately trying to buy his older brother's respect and their mother's approval. But the financial bleed does not stop there. I scroll down to a series of recurring monthly charges. $5,000 a month wired directly to the Oak Ridge Equestrian and Golf Club. The member name on the account is Ashley, Malik's wife. Ashley loves to look down her nose at me. At every family gathering, she parades around in designer clothes, loudly reminding everyone that she comes from respectable old money. She loves to drop subtle racist microaggressions about how my military career is cute, but not a real profession for a sophisticated lady. She treats my daughter Layla like a charity case, refusing to let her own children share their toys with her. And yet my forensic trace reveals the absolute truth. Ashley's old money trust fund dried up 5 years ago. Her parents are practically broke, maintaining a facade of wealth they can no longer afford. Ashley has been maintaining her elite socialite status, her tennis lessons, her spa days, and her ridiculous country club memberships using my blood money. DeAndre stole from his wife and the child he promised to protect just to fund his white sister-in-law's fake aristocratic cosplay. I stare at the transaction logs, feeling a cold laugh rise in my chest. Yvonne has spent years praising Ashley, treating her like royalty, while making me enter through the metaphorical back door. Yvonne worshipped Ashley because she represented proximity to whiteness and wealth. Meanwhile, they were all living on a military black woman's paycheck. DeAndre was so desperate for his mother's approval and his brother's admiration that he willingly bankrupted his own household to keep their house of cards from collapsing. The sheer magnitude of their collective delusion is almost impressive. They really believed I was just a naive soldier playing with computers. They mistook my silence at family dinners for stupidity. I crack my knuckles, the sound sharp in the quiet cabin. It is time to pull the trigger on the trap I set 3 years ago. When you handle highly classified cybersecurity for the federal government, you do not leave your personal assets exposed. I knew DeAndre was financially reckless before we even said our vows. That is why the account he just drained was never my actual savings. I open a secondary command terminal and pull up the master routing data for the account DeAndre looted. The account was a federal decoy, a honeypot established under a military financial protection program designed to catch predatory spouses and foreign financial threats. My actual millions generated from private tech patents and classified bug bounties are safely locked in an impenetrable blind trust. Every single dollar DeAndre transferred out of that decoy account was heavily monitored by Department of Defense auditors. He did not just steal from his wife. He authorized wire transfers across state lines using a forged military spouse identification token to bypass the security holds I had placed on the account. I watched the digital packets align on my screen. He transferred federal funds to private civilian accounts to pay for country club dues and fake businesses. That is not just a marital dispute. That is the textbook definition of federal wire fraud and embezzlement. DeAndre thinks he left me penniless and stranded in a freezing house. He has no idea that his greed just handed the federal government a perfectly documented paper trail of felony crimes. I type a sequence of commands into my terminal packaging: the transaction logs, the forged signature records, and the fraudulent lease agreement for the Aspen Lodge. I lock the file with military-grade encryption. I lean back in my plush leather seat, watching the snow-capped peaks of the Rocky Mountains begin to appear out the window. DeAndre is currently sitting in a private jet drinking my champagne and pretending to be a millionaire. He thinks he is untouchable. He does not know that I have already armed the financial guillotine. I look down at Layla, who shifts in her sleep, her breathing deep and peaceful. Nobody hurts my daughter and gets to keep their freedom. I pull the fraudulent lease agreement back onto my main screen, needing to dissect exactly how Yvonne pulled this off. The metadata on the PDF file tells a fascinating and damning story. The document was created 3 weeks ago on a computer IP address registered to Yvonne's sprawling but heavily mortgaged Atlanta home. I zoom in on the signature line at the bottom of the second page. It is my signature, but the curvature of the letters is clumsy and hesitant. It is a crude digital trace likely lifted from a charity gala check I wrote last Christmas. But what truly seals her fate is the supplementary documentation attached to the lease. The property management firm for the Zenith Lodge requires rigorous background checks and proof of funds for their elite clientele. DeAndre does not have the credit score to rent a storage unit, let alone an $8 million mountain estate. So Yvonne provided collateral. Sitting right there on my screen, attached to the digital file, is a high-resolution scan of my active-duty military identification card. A bitter taste floods my mouth as the pieces snap into place. I remember exactly when she stole this scan. 2 months before my deployment, Yvonne hosted one of her extravagant Sunday dinners. She sneaked into my home office, claiming she needed to use the printer for her church bulletins. Instead, she was rifling through my fireproof safe. She took a scan of my military ID and my primary passport. She used my federal credentials to bypass the security deposit requirements, knowing the management company would trust a high-ranking military officer's profile and verifiable government income. The irony is absolutely suffocating and enraging. Yvonne despises my military career. She constantly tells her country club friends that I am too masculine, that I lack the refined, delicate grace of a true society wife. She practically worships the ground Ashley walks on simply because Ashley is white and claims to descend from some fictitious line of generational wealth. Yvonne bends over backwards to impress Ashley's parents, treating them like visiting royalty while treating me like the hired help. Yet when it came time to secure the luxury vacation of her dreams, to prove to Ashley's family that she belonged in their elite social circle, Yvonne did not hesitate to steal the identity of the black military woman she openly looks down upon. She committed federal identity theft. She forged a signature on a legally binding contract across state lines. She submitted fraudulent military credentials to a civilian corporation to secure goods and services. In her desperate, pathetic scramble for social validation, my mother-in-law just handed me the keys to a federal penitentiary cell. I close the PDF viewer. The cabin of the private jet is quiet, save for the steady, powerful hum of the engines. Layla stirs on the leather sofa, clutching the cashmere blanket tightly under her chin. The dark bruises on her arms peek out from beneath the fabric, a glaring reminder of the violence inflicted upon her. DeAndre's note flashes in my mind again. Deal with her. He thought I would come home, find my traumatized child in a freezing garage, and spend the holiday weeping on the kitchen floor. He thought I would be paralyzed by the betrayal and desperately calling his phone to beg for an explanation. He underestimated me on a fundamental level. I do not beg, I strategize. I reach across the polished mahogany table and pick up the heavy black satellite phone installed in the jet's communications console. It is a secure line, untraceable and encrypted. I do not dial DeAndre. I do not dial Yvonne. Calling them would give them the one thing they absolutely do not deserve, which is a warning. Calling them would allow DeAndre to spin a web of lies to gaslight me, to pack his bags and run before the consequences arrive. I am not interested in a domestic dispute or a screaming match. I am executing a tactical strike. I punch in the direct dispatch number for the Pitkin County Sheriff's Department in Aspen. The line rings twice before a crisp, professional voice answers. Pitkin County Dispatch. What is your emergency? I keep my voice perfectly level, stripping away all emotion until only absolute authority remains. My name is Aaliyah. I am calling to report a felony break-in and the unauthorized occupation of my private property. Okay, ma'am? The dispatcher says, her keyboard clicking rapidly in the background. What is the address of the property? The Zenith Lodge on Red Mountain Road, I reply. The clicking stops instantly. There is a brief, stunned pause on the line. The Zenith Lodge is one of the most exclusive and recognizable estates in the area. Ma'am, I am pulling up the property records now. The dispatcher says, her tone shifting to one of cautious skepticism. Our system shows the Zenith Lodge is currently under a holiday lease agreement managed by Apex Alpine. Are you a representative of the management company? I am the sole legal owner of the estate, I state, firmly projecting absolute command through the receiver. The lease agreement currently on file with Apex Alpine is a fraudulent document. The individuals occupying the residence secured entry using a forged military identification card and bounced checks. They have committed federal wire fraud and identity theft. They are currently trespassing on my property. The dispatcher absorbs this information. The gravity of the words federal identity theft cuts through any remaining skepticism. Can you verify your identity for me, ma'am? I rattle off my Department of Defense identification number, my full legal name, and the employer identification number for the private limited liability company that holds the deed to the estate. I hear the rapid clacking of her keyboard as she runs the data through her system. A tense silence stretches across the satellite connection. I look out the window. The sky is beginning to lighten, breaking through the darkness with a sharp, cold morning glow. The jagged snow-covered peaks of the Colorado mountains are rising up to meet us, piercing through the clouds. Ma'am? The dispatcher finally says, her voice completely changed now, tight with urgency and respect. I have verified your ownership and your federal credentials. How many individuals are currently trespassing on the property? There are at least 6 adults. I reply smoothly, pulling up the flight manifest DeAndre bragged about on social media. My estranged husband DeAndre, his mother Yvonne, his brother Malik, and his wife Ashley. There are also 2 elderly guests, Ashley's parents. You need to know that these individuals believe they have a legal right to be there. They are highly manipulative, and they will likely attempt to escalate the situation or claim this is a simple marital misunderstanding. Do not let them deceive your officers. This is a hostile occupation funded by stolen military assets. Understood, ma'am, the dispatcher says, her tone entirely professional and serious. Are you currently in a safe location? The jet banks slightly beginning its initial descent into the roaring Fork Valley. The seatbelt chime echoes softly through the luxurious cabin. Layla opens her eyes, blinking sleepily against the bright morning light reflecting off the snow below. I reach over and gently squeeze her warm hand, offering her a reassuring smile, before turning my attention back to the satellite phone. My daughter is safe now, and the people who hurt her are entirely out of time. I am perfectly safe, I reply, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous register that leaves absolutely no room for negotiation or doubt. I am informing you of this situation now because I am landing at the Aspen Executive Terminal in exactly 20 minutes to press full criminal charges. I want your best deputies dispatched to the front gates of the Zenith Lodge immediately. Do not approach the doors until I arrive. I am going to walk into my house, and we are going to clean house. The black SUV crawls up the steep, winding incline of Red Mountain Road. The tires crunch over packed snow as we pass towering pine trees and the iron gates of neighboring estates. The driver pulls into the heated circular driveway of the Zenith Lodge. My eyes lock onto the massive 3-story structure of glass stone and dark timber. Warm golden light spills from the floor to ceiling windows, illuminating the pristine snowbanks outside. Through the glass, I can clearly see the silhouettes of people moving through the grand dining room. My pulse remains completely steady. I unbuckle Layla from her car seat, keeping her securely wrapped in my heavy olive green military parka. She buries her face into my neck, her small arms holding on tight. You stay right here against Mommy, I whisper, kissing her forehead. We are just going to go inside and say a quick hello to some people. I leave my tactical bag in the SUV, telling the driver to keep the engine running and the heat blasting. I march up the heated stone steps, my combat boots leaving heavy tracks behind me. I do not bother looking for a doorbell or a key code. I know the exact structural layout of this house because I personally approved the blueprints 2 years ago. I step up to the massive custom mahogany double doors. I lift my boot and kick the center seam with the calculated force of a soldier breaching a hostile compound. The heavy doors violently burst open, banging against the interior stone walls with a deafening crack that echoes through the entire estate. The blast of freezing mountain air rushes into the grand foyer, swirling with the warm, heavy scents of roasted turkey, truffle butter, and expensive cinnamon candles. A smooth jazz saxophone playing from the surround sound system is instantly drowned out by the sheer shock of my entrance. I step over the threshold, my boots tracking thick clumps of snow onto the imported Persian rug. I walk straight into the great room and stop. The scene before me is a masterpiece of unearned luxury. A private catering staff in crisp white uniforms is discreetly backing away toward the kitchen. The dining table is a sprawling slab of live edge walnut covered in crystal glasses, silver platters of lobster tails, and a massive golden brown turkey. At the head of the table stands my husband. DeAndre is wearing a custom-tailored velvet blazer that I paid for. He is holding a crystal flute of vintage champagne mid-air. He was in the middle of a boisterous laugh, telling a story to his captivated audience. When his eyes lock onto mine, the laugh dies in his throat. The smug, arrogant glow completely drains from his face, replaced by a sickening pale shade of absolute terror. He lowers the champagne flute so fast his hand shakes, spilling the expensive liquid over his polished leather shoes. DeAndre cannot form a single word. He is staring at the woman he thought was thousands of miles away, broke and sobbing in a freezing house. He is staring at the child he locked in a concrete garage, now standing in the middle of his multi-million-dollar lie. Before DeAndre can even attempt to recover, his mother shatters the silence. Yvonne is standing near the carving station draped in a ridiculous emerald green silk dress, layered with fake pearls. When she sees me, the heavy silver serving spoon slips from her manicured fingers and clatters loudly against the hardwood floor. Her face twists into a mask of pure elitist rage. For a second, I see the exact same vicious woman who put her hands on my 6-year-old daughter. But she quickly remembers she has an audience. She remembers she is playing the role of the wealthy, refined matriarch. What is the meaning of this? Yvonne shrieks, her voice shrill and trembling with artificial outrage. How dare you break into this house? This is a private upper-class family gathering. We are hosting distinguished guests and you come bursting in here like some kind of street thug. I do not say a word. I simply adjust my grip on Layla, letting my cold, unblinking gaze drag from Yvonne over to the so-called distinguished guests. Sitting across the table looking utterly appalled are Ashley's parents. They are older, wealthy white people dripping in the kind of quiet luxury that Yvonne practically worships. They are staring at my combat boots, my tactical cargo pants, and the snow melting off my jacket as if I am a rabid animal that just wandered out of the woods. Next to them sits Malik, DeAndre's older brother, sipping his whiskey and looking extremely nervous. And right beside Malik sits his wife, Ashley. Ashley has always treated me like a disease. She thrives on making sure I know my place in her racial and financial hierarchy. She leans back in her tufted dining chair, crossing her legs and swirling the red wine in her oversized glass. She looks me up and down with a sneer of absolute unfiltered disgust. Malik Ashley sighs loudly, making sure her parents hear her dripping condescension. Why exactly is the military charity case tracking dirty snow all over our imported rugs? I thought DeAndre told us he handled his little domestic problem back in Atlanta. Ashley takes a slow, deliberate sip of her wine before locking her pale eyes onto mine. Her lips curl into a mocking smirk. Really, Aaliyah, this is just pathetic. Showing up uninvited to a luxury estate in your dirty work uniform, bringing that child here to beg for attention. You are embarrassing yourself in front of my parents. Do us all a favor and take your baggage back to whatever base you crawled out of before you ruin our Thanksgiving entirely. The sheer audacity of her insult hangs heavy in the warm air. She is sitting in my house drinking my wine funded by my stolen money, and she is calling me a charity case. I slowly lower Layla to her feet, keeping one protective hand resting on her small shoulder. I look Ashley dead in the eyes, and I smile. It is a slow, terrifying smile that makes Malik instantly shift backward in his chair. The ambush is set and the first tripwire has just been crossed. The silence in the grand dining room is absolute and suffocating. Ashley just called me a military charity case right in front of her wealthy parents and the private catering staff. My smile does not waver. I do not break eye contact with her. I simply stand there in the center of the foyer with the snow melting off my combat boots onto the priceless Persian rug. My utter lack of an emotional reaction sends a visible wave of panic straight through my husband. DeAndre knows that smile. He has seen it only once before when I caught a contractor trying to steal classified data from my server. He knows it means absolute destruction is imminent. DeAndre slams his crystal champagne flute down onto the live-edge walnut table. The sharp crack of glass against wood makes his mother Yvonne flinch. He turns his back on Ashley and her aristocratic parents, forcing a tight artificial laugh to try and diffuse the incredible tension in the room. "Excuse me for just one moment, everyone," DeAndre says, projecting his voice with that fake smooth investment broker charm he uses to manipulate clients. "Just a minor misunderstanding with my estranged wife. I will handle this quickly." He marches across the room toward me. His strides are long and aggressive. DeAndre is 6 feet 2 inches tall, and he has always used his physical size to try and shrink the women around him. He wears a custom-tailored velvet blazer that costs more than what most people make in a month. I know exactly how much it costs because I traced the wire transfer he stole from my decoy account to pay for it. He stops just inches from my face, trying to use his body to physically box me in and block my line of sight to the dining table. He reeks of expensive imported cologne and desperate sweat. His chest is heaving slightly. "What the hell are you doing here, Aaliyah?" He hisses, his voice dropping to a harsh, toxic whisper. "You are supposed to be deployed in Germany for another month." "Plans change when I find my daughter locked in a freezing concrete garage," I reply, keeping my voice perfectly level and conversational. He glares down at Layla, who is hiding her face against my heavy military parka. He looks at her not with the guilt or shame of a man who endangered a child, but with pure, unadulterated annoyance. He rolls his eyes, letting out a sharp breath. "My mother put her in timeout for throwing a tantrum about packing," DeAndre mutters, waving his hand dismissively. "You always overreact to everything. She is fine. You had no right to track my location and fly across the country to crash my private vacation. Do you have any idea how much money is sitting at that dinner table right now? Ashley's father is a major venture capitalist. I am 2 seconds away from securing a massive portfolio investment from him. You are actively destroying my career." "Your career," I repeat, tasting the absolute delusion in his words. "You do not have a career, DeAndre. You play dress-up with stolen money." His jaw clenches so hard a muscle ticks furiously in his cheek. He takes another step forward, invading my personal space, trying to force me to back up toward the heavy mahogany doors. I do not move a single inch. I plant my boots firmly into the rug. My military combat training automatically assesses his posture. His center of gravity is completely off balance. He is leaning forward, leading with his ego. I could drop him to the floor in under 3 seconds, but I refuse to give him the satisfaction of a physical altercation. I want him to face federal consequences, not a domestic dispute charge. "Get out," DeAndre whispers aggressively, his face turning an ugly shade of red. "I mean it, Aaliyah. You do not belong here. You never fit in with my family, and you are certainly not fitting in with this caliber of society. You are embarrassing me." Yvonne chimes in from the background, unable to resist adding fuel to the fire. She stands behind her golden child Malik, crossing her arms over her ridiculous emerald green silk dress. "Listen to your husband, Aaliyah," Yvonne calls out, her voice shrill and commanding. "You are ruining a sophisticated holiday gathering. We are trying to enjoy a peaceful Thanksgiving. Take that child back to whatever cheap motel you crawled out of and let the adults handle their business." DeAndre nods, feeling emboldened by his mother's support. He actually raises his hand and jabs his index finger hard against the center of my chest. "You heard my mother." DeAndre snarls, his voice rising in volume, so the wealthy in-laws at the table can hear him taking charge of his allegedly unhinged wife. "Take that brat and get out of my house." I look down at the finger pressed against my uniform. Then I look back up into his eyes. "Your house?" I ask softly. "Yes, my rented lodge," DeAndre declares, puffing out his chest and standing to his full height. "I paid for this lease. My name is on the contract. You have absolutely no legal right to be standing in this foyer." He takes a deep breath, deciding to perform for the audience watching from the dining room. He raises his voice to a booming, authoritative shout. "You have exactly 3 minutes to turn around, walk out those doors, and get off my property. Aaliyah, if you are not out of my sight in 3 minutes, I'm going to call the cops and have you arrested for trespassing. I will let them drag you out of here in handcuffs in front of your kid." The dining room is dead silent. Ashley is smirking, swirling her red wine, clearly enjoying watching the military charity case get put in her place. Malik looks proud of his younger brother for establishing dominance. Yvonne nods in stern approval. DeAndre stands before me, breathless and victorious, fully believing he has just won the ultimate power struggle. He thinks he holds every single card. He thinks his forged lease agreement makes him a king. I do not flinch. I do not raise my voice. I do not break eye contact. I reach up with my free hand and slowly grasp the Velcro strap on my black tactical glove. The ripping sound of the Velcro is terrifyingly loud in the quiet foyer. I pull the heavy combat glove off my right hand, exposing my bare skin. I fold the glove methodically and slide it into my cargo pocket. I look DeAndre dead in the eye, capturing his gaze with the cold, absolute certainty of a predator watching its prey step blindly into a steel trap. Please, I say, my voice ringing with crystal clear authority, call them. I insist. DeAndre frowns, his arrogant facade cracking just a fraction of an inch at my total lack of fear. He opens his mouth to yell another threat, but the words never materialize. Because in that exact moment, the reflection in the floor-to-ceiling glass windows behind him completely changes. The pristine white snowbanks outside the dining room are suddenly illuminated by blinding flashes of color. Bright piercing strobes of red and blue light sweep violently across the imported rugs, the crystal glasses, and the shocked faces of the dinner guests. The heavy crunch of tires on packed snow echoes loudly from the driveway. In fact, I continue keeping my eyes locked on my husband's rapidly paling face. I think you will find they are already pulling up the driveway. The flashing red and blue lights paint the snowbanks outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, bathing the grand dining room in a chaotic strobe effect. The smooth jazz playing from the surround sound system suddenly feels like a mocking soundtrack to the panic rippling across my husband's face. DeAndre stands completely frozen, his custom velvet blazer catching the aggressive flash of the police sirens. He stares at the flashing lights, then back at me, his mouth opening and closing without a single sound escaping his throat. A heavy, authoritative knock echoes through the grand foyer. It is loud enough to rattle the thick mahogany doors I had just kicked open. I do not move a muscle. I simply look at DeAndre and gesture toward the entrance with a slight tilt of my head. You were just threatening to have me dragged out in handcuffs, DeAndre, I say, keeping my voice perfectly calm and measured. You should probably get the door. Your guests have arrived. He swallows hard, his Adam's apple bobbing nervously against his crisp collar. He forces his feet to move, stepping over the threshold and pulling the heavy door open. A blast of freezing wind sweeps into the foyer, accompanied by two Pitkin County Sheriff deputies. They step inside, bringing the sharp scent of pine and winter air with them. Their boots crunch against the hardwood, their hands resting casually but alertly near their duty belts. They scan the room instantly, taking in the lavish spread on the dining table, the terrified caterers backing away into the kitchen, and finally the tense standoff in the foyer. Before the lead deputy can even open his mouth to speak, Yvonne goes into full performance mode. My mother-in-law practically shoves her way past DeAndre, nearly tripping over the hem of her ridiculous emerald green silk dress. She clutches her fake pearls to her chest, her face contorting into a mask of pure, terrified victimhood. She channels every ounce of her mega-church theatrical training, turning on the waterworks with terrifying speed. "Officers, thank the Lord you are here!" Yvonne cries out, her voice quivering with artificial panic. She reaches out as if to grab the deputy's sleeve, but he takes a professional step back. "She is unhinged, officer. She broke into our private family gathering. We are respectable people hosting very important guests, and this woman just came barging in here like a violent street thug." The deputies remain impassive, their eyes darting between Yvonne's dramatic display and my absolute stillness. The lead deputy, a tall man with sharp, observant eyes, holds up a gloved hand to pause her frantic rambling. "Ma'am, please lower your voice," he instructs firmly. "Who called dispatch?" "I am the one who called," I state clearly, my voice ringing out above Yvonne's fabricated sobbing. Yvonne whips her head around to glare at me, dropping the frightened elder act for a split second to bare her teeth before quickly recovering her victim posture. "Do not listen to her, officer," Yvonne wails, pointing a shaking manicured finger at my face. "She is my son's estranged wife. She has severe mental issues from her time in the military. She tracked our location and flew across the country just to harass my successful son. She even dragged that poor child out into a blizzard just to use her as a prop to extort money from us. She is dangerous." The sheer audacity of her lies hangs in the warm air of the lodge. The wealthy white parents sitting at the dining table look absolutely horrified, whispering to each other behind their wine glasses. Ashley is leaning forward in her chair, practically glowing with satisfaction, fully believing the police are about to tackle me to the ground and drag me away. DeAndre, sensing that his mother has perfectly set the stage, decides to regain his footing. He smooths his velvet lapels, straightens his spine, and steps forward to intercept the deputies. He puts on his deepest, most reasonable investment broker voice, the one he uses to scam clients out of their retirement funds. I apologize for the disruption, officers, DeAndre says, offering them a tight, man-to-man smile. I am DeAndre. I am the one who leased this estate for the holiday weekend. My mother is a bit shaken up, but she is telling the truth. That woman standing there is my wife, Aaliyah. We are going through a very bitter separation. She has been unstable for months. She somehow found out where I was hosting my brothers-in-laws for Thanksgiving and decided to trespass on my rented property to cause a scene. The lead deputy looks at DeAndre, then glances toward the dining room, noting the lavish setup. He turns his attention back to my husband. You are saying you are the legal tenant of this property, sir? Absolutely, DeAndre replies with soaring confidence. He reaches into the inside pocket of his blazer and pulls out a neatly folded document. Here is the lease agreement directly from Apex Alpine Management. I paid for this rental in full. I am asking you to remove her from my property immediately. If she refuses to leave, I want her arrested for trespassing and harassment. I watch in total silence as my husband hands a forged legal document to a sworn officer of the law. I watch him double down on his lies while the deputy's body cameras record every single syllable escaping his lips. In cyber warfare, you do not interrupt the enemy when they are actively downloading a virus into their own mainframe. You let them open every single back door. You let them commit to their destruction. He is weaving the very rope that will hang him, and he is doing it with a smug smile on his face. The lead deputy takes the folded lease agreement. He unfolds it, scanning the text and the forged signatures at the bottom of the page. He looks at the document for a long, silent moment. The second deputy steps slightly to the side, securing a better tactical view of the entire room, clearly assessing the tension levels. The lead deputy lowers the paper. He does not hand it back to DeAndre. Instead, he turns slowly and faces me. His eyes sweep over my heavy olive-green military parka, the snow melting off my combat boots, and the small child clinging desperately to my leg. He notices my absolute stillness. He notices that I am not screaming, not crying, and not trying to interrupt the wild accusations being hurled at me. He notices the disciplined military bearing radiating from my posture. Ma'am, the deputy says, his voice neutral but authoritative. He rests his right hand casually against his radio receiver. The man here is claiming you are trespassing on his leased property and causing a disturbance. Are you Aaliyah? I nod once, keeping my expression completely devoid of emotion. Yes, officer, I am. He takes a step toward me, creating a slight physical barrier between myself and DeAndre's aggressive stance. He states that you and he are separated and you arrived uninvited. I need to hear your side of the story, ma'am, and I am going to need to see a valid form of identification. DeAndre lets out a loud, theatrical sigh, crossing his arms over his chest. This is a waste of taxpayer time, officer. I literally just handed you the lease. She has no right to be here. Just put her in the back of your cruiser so my family can eat our dinner in peace. I do not argue with DeAndre. I do not raise my voice to defend my sanity against Yvonne's vicious lies. I reach down and gently stroke Layla's natural curls, silently promising my daughter that the nightmare is exactly 30 seconds away from ending. I look up and lock my eyes dead onto DeAndre's face. I watch the arrogant, impatient scowl twisting his features. I let him savor his delusion of victory for one final fleeting heartbeat. Then I slowly reach my bare hand into the deep side pocket of my tactical duffel bag. I pull out a thick, heavy leather-bound portfolio. The heavy leather portfolio feels solid and grounding in my hands. I do not rush. I move with the deliberate, practiced precision of a soldier defusing an explosive device. The lead deputy keeps his hand resting cautiously near his duty belt, but his eyes remain locked on my hands, ensuring I am not reaching for a weapon. I flip the portfolio open, letting the thick pages rest flat against my forearm. I pull out my active duty military identification card and hand it directly to the lead deputy. He takes it, holding it up to the light cascading from the dining room chandeliers to check the holographic security seal. I watch his eyes scan my rank and clearance level. The rigid posture he held when he walked through the door softens just a fraction. He nods, acknowledging my federal status, and hands the card back to me. Next, I extract a stack of crisp, watermarked legal documents, I hand him the certified articles of incorporation for my private limited liability company, followed immediately by the original stamped deed to the Zenith Lodge. I am the sole managing member of the holding company listed on that deed, officer. I state, my voice echoing clearly in the vast, silent foyer. I purchased this $8 million estate 2 years ago in cash. It is my private property. The man standing in front of you has absolutely no ownership stake, no legal claim, and no authorization to be standing on these hardwood floors. DeAndre lets out a sharp, condescending scoff. He rolls his eyes, looking at the deputies as if I am speaking absolute nonsense. Do not listen to her, he says, waving his hand dismissively. She is making things up to sound important. I gave you the lease agreement. I paid the deposit. This is my rental. I ignore my husband completely, keeping my gaze fixed on the deputy. I pull the final 2 pieces of paper from my portfolio. I hand the deputy a copy of the exact lease agreement DeAndre just provided, but mine includes the attached supplementary background check forms. Right beside it, I hand him a high-resolution printed scan of a bounced check bearing my mother-in-law's name. The lease that man handed you is a forged document, I explain, my tone remaining perfectly surgical and cold. His mother, Yvonne, stole a digital scan of my military identification card before my deployment. She used my federal credentials to bypass the security deposit requirements and secure this rental under false pretenses. She then submitted that check, which bounced 3 consecutive times due to insufficient funds. The property management group Apex Alpine issued a final eviction notice 48 hours ago. The lead deputy looks down at the documents in his hands. He compares the signature on the fraudulent lease to the signature on my military ID. He looks at the bounced check. Then he reaches up and presses the microphone on his shoulder radio, confirming the details with his dispatcher, who had already verified my ownership when I called from the private jet. The radio crackles with static as the dispatcher confirms that the property belongs exclusively to my holding company, and that the lease on file is currently under investigation for fraud. The shift in the room is instantaneous and absolute. The lead deputy lowers the paperwork and turns his body entirely away from me. He squares his shoulders and faces DeAndre. The professional courtesy he had extended to my husband just moments ago completely evaporates. Sir, the deputy says, his voice dropping into a stern, no-nonsense command tone. This deed is authentic. The dispatcher has verified that this estate belongs to this woman. Furthermore, the property management company has confirmed that your lease is fraudulent and your payment was rejected due to insufficient funds. You do not have a valid contract to be here. DeAndre physically recoils. He takes a clumsy step backward, his expensive leather shoes slipping slightly on the melted snow I tracked into the foyer. The blood drains from his face so rapidly he looks physically ill. He opens his mouth to speak, but he just stammers, unable to string a single coherent sentence together. Yvonne lets out a high-pitched gasp. She clutches her chest, her fake pearls rattling against her emerald green silk dress. There must be some mistake, she cries out, her theatrical bravado completely shattering. We are good Christian people. We would never do such a thing. That management company must have made a bank error. The deputy ignores her protests. He sweeps his gaze across DeAndre, Yvonne, Malik, and Ashley. As of this moment, the deputy announces loudly, ensuring every single person in the grand dining room hears him clearly. You are all officially trespassing on private property. The reaction from the dining table is immediate and catastrophic. Ashley's wealthy parents, who have been sitting in frozen silence, suddenly spring to life. Her father, a man who prides himself on his immaculate social standing, drops his linen napkin onto his plate with a look of utter revulsion. He stands up his chair, scraping harshly against the floor. Are you telling me we are sitting in a stolen house, Ashley's? Father demands, his voice shaking with absolute disgust. He glares at Malik and DeAndre as if they are covered in toxic waste. You brought us here under the pretense of hosting a luxury holiday, and you are actually squatting in a house you broke into using forged checks. This is entirely unacceptable. Ashley's mother covers her mouth with her hand, looking around the lavish dining room as if the expensive imported furniture might suddenly infect her. She looks at Yvonne with pure, unfiltered disdain. We were told this was a high society gathering, she whispers harshly. You people are criminals. Ashley turns a sickly shade of gray. The old money facade she has spent years carefully curating is burning to the ground right in front of her parents' eyes. She looks at her husband Malik, her eyes wide with panic and fury. "Do something," Ashley hisses at him. "Fix this right now. Tell them it is a mistake." But Malik is completely paralyzed. The golden child who has spent his entire life failing upwards has absolutely no idea how to handle a situation where his smooth-talking brother cannot bail him out. Malik just stares at the police deputies looking like a terrified child. DeAndre realizes his entire world is collapsing. His wealthy in-laws despise him. His brother is useless. The police are treating him like a common criminal. He is desperate to regain control to save face in front of the elite audience he tried so hard to impress. He abandons the narrative of being a wealthy renter and violently pivots his strategy. "Wait!" DeAndre shouts, holding up both his hands and stepping aggressively toward the deputies. "You do not understand how this works. She is my wife." He points a shaking finger directly at me, his face twisted with desperate, arrogant entitlement. "We are legally married," DeAndre declares loudly, projecting his voice so Ashley's parents can hear him. "Even if she bought this house behind my back, it does not matter. We live in a marital property state. What is hers is mine. I have a legal right to occupy any real estate my wife purchases. This is just a bitter civil dispute over marital assets. You cannot kick me out of a house that belongs to my own marriage. You do not have the jurisdiction to remove me from my own property." He crosses his arms over his custom velvet blazer, trying to look victorious, trying to hide the fact that he is sweating profusely in the air-conditioned foyer. He really thinks he has found the ultimate loophole. He thinks the sacred bond of marriage will protect him from the consequences of his own greed. I do not raise my voice. I do not match his frantic, chaotic energy. I simply shake my head slowly, looking at him with nothing but cold, calculated pity. I reach into my leather portfolio one final time. I pull out a thick stack of printed financial logs. The pages are stamped with official federal audit seals. I walk forward, closing the distance between us, and hand the heavy stack of documents directly to the lead deputy. "Actually, officer," I say, my voice slicing through DeAndre's pathetic defense like a surgical blade. That man has spent the last 6 months systematically transferring massive sums of money across state lines. He did not realize that the account he was draining was a federal decoy honeypot heavily monitored by military auditors. DeAndre's arms drop to his sides, his mouth falls open. In order to move those funds and bypass the security holds, I continue keeping my eyes locked onto my husband's terrified face. He utilized a forged military spouse identification token. He stole federal money to fund his brother's failing businesses and his sister-in-law's country club dues. So while he might want to argue about marital property in a civil court, he is currently going to have to explain his actions to the federal government. I turn my gaze back to the deputy, tapping the top page of the audit logs. "That is not a marital dispute, officer," I say, my voice echoing with finality. "That is a documented federal offense." The lead deputy stares at the federal audit logs in his hands. The official government seals and the meticulously tracked IP addresses leave zero room for interpretation. He looks up at DeAndre, and his hand moves instinctively to rest on his utility belt. He instructs DeAndre to step back and not make any sudden movements. The entire dining room watches the power dynamic violently flip. DeAndre is no longer the wealthy host. He is a suspect in a federal financial crime. Sensing that the ship is rapidly sinking, Ashley decides it is time to abandon her in-laws. She pushes her heavy, tufted dining chair back so forcefully it nearly tips over. She stands up, smoothing down her designer silk dress, and grabs her expensive clutch from the table. She turns to her wealthy parents, who are sitting frozen in shock, and motions for them to get up. "We are leaving right now," Ashley announces, her voice loud and trembling with forced indignation. "Mom, Dad, get your coats. I apologize that you had to witness this absolute train wreck. I told you Malik's family was nothing but trouble. We come from respectable old money, and I absolutely refuse to be associated with DeAndre and Yvonne's ghetto scam. We are not staying in this stolen house for another second." Yvonne lets out a scandalized gasp, placing a hand over her heart. She cannot believe the white daughter-in-law she has spent years worshipping and trying to impress is throwing her under the bus at the first sign of trouble. Ashley looks at Yvonne with pure, unfiltered disgust, entirely dropping the polite high society act. She treats my mother-in-law the exact same way Yvonne has treated me for years, like dirt on the bottom of her shoe. I take a slow, deliberate step forward, blocking the wide archway that leads from the dining room to the grand foyer. I am not going to let Ashley walk away and pretend she is an innocent victim in this massive financial conspiracy. She has spent years looking down her nose at my military uniform, making snide microaggressions about my hair, my career, and my child. Now it is my turn to speak. Old money, Ashley. I ask, my voice ringing clear and sharp across the silent estate. Ashley glares at me, lifting her chin in a pathetic display of aristocratic superiority. Move out of my way, Aaliyah, she snaps, snapping her fingers as if I am a disobedient servant. You have done enough damage with your little revenge stunt. Do not speak to me. My family has generational wealth, and we have nothing to do with whatever low-class financial crimes your husband committed. I do not move. I reach right back into my heavy leather portfolio. I pull out the secondary stack of financial tracing logs that I decrypted while flying 30,000 feet in the air. I hold the papers up, letting the thick packet catch the light of the crystal chandeliers. Because according to the bank routing numbers, I just hacked out of your husband's accounts. Your trust fund dried up exactly 5 years ago, I state, keeping my eyes locked on her suddenly pale face. Your parents might have had money once upon a time, but their accounts are heavily leveraged. You do not have generational wealth, Ashley. You are completely broke. Ashley's mouth drops open. The arrogant sneer vanishes instantly. Her parents, sitting just behind her, exchange a look of absolute sheer panic. The facade they have been maintaining for years has just been shattered in a room full of police officers and catering staff. Malik finally finds his voice. The golden child steps forward, puffing out his chest to defend his wife. He points a finger at me, trying to summon the same intimidating energy DeAndre used earlier. Shut your mouth, Aaliyah, Malik barks. You have no idea what you are talking about. My wife comes from a prestigious lineage. I provide for her. My investment firm is thriving. We do not need anything from you or DeAndre. I turn my cold surgical gaze to my brother-in-law. Your investment firm has not generated a single dollar of actual revenue in 12 months. Malik, I reply, reciting the data I memorized on the flight. Your last 3 startups went bankrupt. You have 0 active clients. You do not provide for anyone. Do you want to know how I know that? Because I have the exact federal ledger showing how you keep the lights on in your massive suburban house. I walk over to the lead deputy and hand him the second stack of papers, making sure to highlight the specific transaction logs with my index finger. DeAndre did not just steal my money to rent this lodge. Officer, I explain, projecting my voice so every single person at the dining table can hear me clearly. He has been funneling stolen federal funds directly into a holding company owned by his brother, Malik. DeAndre drained my decoy account and wired hundreds of thousands of dollars to keep Malik from declaring bankruptcy. Malik freezes. He looks at DeAndre, who refuses to meet his eyes. DeAndre is staring at the floor, completely humiliated. And what exactly did Malik do with those stolen military funds? I continue, turning slowly back to face Ashley. He used them to pay for your elite tennis lessons. He used them to pay for your luxury spa days. He used my money to cover your $5,000 a month membership at the Oak Ridge Equestrian and Golf Club, so you could sip mimosas with your friends and pretend you were still rich. Ashley takes a stumbling step backward. Her face is a sickly shade of white. Her mother lets out a quiet, mortified sob, burying her face in her hands. Her father looks at Ashley with a mixture of rage and profound embarrassment, realizing his daughter has been living a lie funded by a massive criminal enterprise. Yvonne looks like she might actually pass out. The woman she placed on a pedestal, the white daughter-in-law she held up as the gold standard of grace and sophistication, is nothing but a broke grifter living off my stolen paycheck. Yvonne has spent years insulting my career, telling me I lacked class, while proudly parading Ashley around her megachurch. Now she is standing in a room realizing that my hard work paid for every single ounce of Ashley's fake luxury. You called me a military charity case, Ashley? I say, closing the distance between us until I'm standing just a few feet away from her trembling figure. I look her up and down, taking in her expensive silk dress and her diamond earrings. Every single designer bag you own, every steak you are eating tonight, every drop of wine in your glass was paid for by the black military woman you just insulted. You are not old money. You are a parasite. You are all living on my stolen dime. The catering staff in the kitchen are dead silent, watching the absolute destruction of this family hierarchy. The deputies stand by, watchful and alert, understanding the massive scope of the financial fraud they have just walked into. I stand tall in my combat boots and cargo pants, feeling an immense, overwhelming wave of power radiating through my veins. They thought they could break me. They thought they could discard my daughter and use my life savings to fund their ridiculous delusions of grandeur. Instead, they just handed me the match to burn their entire house of cards to the ground. The sharp scraping of heavy wooden dining chairs against the imported hardwood floor shatters the suffocating silence in the room. Ashley's father stands up to his full height. His face, previously pale with shock, has now transformed into a mask of pure, unfiltered, aristocratic revulsion. He is a man whose entire existence revolves around pristine credit scores, country club board meetings, and maintaining the illusion of generational superiority. Now he is standing in the middle of a massive federal crime scene, surrounded by stolen luxury goods. He looks at Malik and DeAndre not as family members, but as highly infectious diseases that threaten to contaminate whatever fragile social standing he has left. He turns to his wife, who is already clutching her designer handbag against her chest like a shield. "Get your coat," he commands, his voice tight with absolute disgust. "We are leaving. We are not spending another second in a house secured by federal wire fraud." Ashley lets out a strangled, desperate gasp. Her entire carefully curated reality is disintegrating in front of her eyes. She scrambles out of her tufted dining chair, nearly tripping over the hem of her expensive silk dress. She practically sprints across the room, throwing herself at her father and frantically grabbing the sleeve of his cashmere sweater. "Dad, please wait," Ashley begs, her voice cracking, pitching into a frantic, high-pitched whine. "You cannot just leave me here with these people. You have to help us. Write a check. Call your lawyers. Do something. We can fix this before it gets out." Her father stops dead in his tracks. He does not offer her a comforting embrace. He does not whisper words of reassurance. Instead, he reaches down and coldly, violently peels his daughter's fingers off his expensive sweater. He looks at Ashley with a profound, chilling disappointment that seems to freeze the very air in the grand foyer. "Write a check," he repeats, his tone laced with absolute venom. "You expect me to write a check to cover hundreds of thousands of dollars in stolen military funds? You lied to us, Ashley. You paraded this man around telling us his investment firm was thriving. You let us sit at this table and eat food paid for by identity theft. My own financial accounts are barely keeping us afloat, and I will absolutely not invite a federal audit into my life because my daughter decided to marry into a family of pathetic broke embezzlers." Ashley's mother refuses to even look at her daughter. She pulls her fur-trimmed coat tightly around her shoulders, keeping her eyes fixed firmly on the mahogany front doors. "You made your bed," Ashley, her mother says, her voice devoid of any maternal warmth. "Now you get to lie in it. Do not call us to bail you out of a federal indictment. We will not answer." They do not hesitate for another second. Ashley's parents march straight past DeAndre and Yvonne, stepping around the melting snow from my combat boots. They pull open the heavy front doors, letting a blast of freezing mountain wind whip through the foyer and step out into the harsh aspen blizzard. The heavy doors slam shut behind them, echoing with a dull, booming finality. The ultimate social guillotine has just dropped, severing Ashley from the only world she ever truly cared about. Ashley collapses to her knees right there on the priceless Persian rug. She buries her face in her hands and begins to sob uncontrollably. It is a loud, ugly, wretched sound of a woman who just lost her entire identity. Malik snaps out of his paralyzed stupor. The golden child rushes forward, dropping to his knees beside his wife. He reaches out tentatively, placing a hand on her shaking shoulder. "Ashley, baby, it is going to be okay." Malik stammers, his voice trembling with terror. I will figure this out. I will launch a new company. I will protect you. Ashley forcefully slaps his hand away. She scrambles backward, scrambling across the rug to get away from him, as if his very touch burns her skin. Do not touch me, she screams, her face red and streaked with ruined makeup. You are a fraud, Malik. You are a broke, pathetic loser. You let your little brother steal from his wife to buy me jewelry. You humiliated me in front of my parents. I want a divorce. I want you completely out of my life. Malik shrinks back, looking absolutely devastated. The armor of the successful older brother, the brilliant entrepreneur, the favorite son is completely shattered. He is nothing but a man sitting on the floor, realizing he has $0, zero prospects, and a wife who despises him. He looks up at his mother helplessly, begging her with his eyes to fix the nightmare unfolding around him. Yvonne watches her precious golden child break down, and the sight pushes her entirely over the edge. My mother-in-law has spent her entire life carefully curating her image. She rules her local Atlanta megachurch with an iron fist, judging other women for their clothes, their marriages, and their finances. She demands respect and obedience. She worshipped Ashley because Ashley represented the white affluent society Yvonne desperately wanted to infiltrate. She catered to Ashley's every whim, serving her first at family dinners and hanging on her every condescending word. And she did all of it while treating me, the black military woman who actually funded her entire existence, like an unwanted stray dog. Now Yvonne is standing in the ruins of her fake empire. Her wealthy in-laws have fled in disgust. Her white daughter-in-law is screaming for a divorce. Her youngest son is facing federal prison. And I am standing tall in my uniform, holding the match that burned it all down. The narcissistic injury is absolute and catastrophic. Yvonne cannot handle the reality of her own failures. She cannot accept that her greed and her cruelty have brought this destruction upon her family. So she does what toxic people always do. She violently redirects the blame. This is your fault, Yvonne shrieks, her voice reaching a pitch so high it physically hurts the ears. She points a shaking, manicured finger directly at my face, her eyes wide and rolling with pure, unadulterated madness. You planned this. You demonic, spiteful woman. You deliberately destroyed my boys. You humiliated me in front of respectable people. I will never be able to show my face at Sunday service again because of your jealousy. You ruined my life. She does not stop at screaming. The fragile, polite church lady facade completely evaporates, leaving behind a vicious, feral predator. Yvonne curls her hands into tight claws bearing her expensive acrylic nails and lunges across the foyer straight at me. She is aiming right for my face, attempting to physically tear the calm, calculated expression off my features. She wants to scratch, to hit, to inflict physical pain to match the psychological devastation she is currently experiencing. My military combat reflexes instantly ignite. The adrenaline dumps into my bloodstream, slowing time down to a crawl. I track her aggressive trajectory, calculating the exact angle of her attack. I could step forward, intercept her wrist, and drop her to the hardwood floor with a joint lock before she even gets within striking distance. I have neutralized hostile combatants twice her size in active war zones. But I force myself to remain completely still. I do not raise my hands to defend myself. I do not step backward. I intentionally keep my arms relaxed at my sides. I know exactly who is standing 3 feet to my left. The lead sheriff deputy reacts with lightning speed. He is a sworn law enforcement officer standing in an active crime scene, and he just witnessed a suspect attempt to violently assault a federal military employee. He does not hesitate for a fraction of a second. Before Yvonne's manicured claws can even graze the fabric of my heavy parka, the deputy intercepts her. He steps forcefully into her path, grabbing her outstretched arm with a practiced iron grip. He uses her own forward momentum against her, spinning her body around with a swift, aggressive motion. Yvonne lets out a shocked, breathless gasp as the deputy drives her forward, slamming her chest and face directly against the solid stone wall of the grand foyer. The impact is loud and brutal. Her expensive fake pearl necklace catches between her chest and the rough stone. The string violently snaps. Dozens of small white beads scatter explosively across the hardwood floor, bouncing and rolling in every direction with a chaotic, clattering sound. "Get your hands off me!" Yvonne screams, struggling wildly against the deputy's hold. "Do you know who I am? I am a respectable woman." The deputy ignores her frantic protests. He kicks her feet apart to widen her stance and secure his leverage. He effortlessly twists her arms behind her back, holding her wrists together with one massive hand. With his free hand, he reaches to his utility belt. The sharp metallic click of the steel handcuffs locking tightly around Yvonne's wrists echoes through the silent house. It is the loudest, most satisfying sound I have ever heard in my entire life. "Ma'am, stop resisting, or I will add assault on a peace officer to your charges," the deputy barks, pressing his forearm firmly against her back to keep her pinned to the stone. Yvonne stops thrashing her cheek, pressed uncomfortably against the cold wall. She begins to hyperventilate, her chest heaving, as the absolute reality of her situation crashes down upon her. She is no longer a wealthy matriarch hosting a luxury Thanksgiving dinner. She is a criminal in handcuffs. The deputy pulls her away from the wall, turning her around so she is forced to look directly at the destruction of her family. He grips her arm firmly, securing his physical control over her trembling body. He looks her dead in the eyes and delivers the final crushing blow. "Yvonne, you are under arrest for attempted assault and felony forgery," the deputy states, his voice echoing with undeniable authority. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. Do you understand the rights I have just read to you?" Yvonne does not answer. She just stares at the flashing red and blue police lights reflecting off the living room windows, weeping uncontrollably as the cold, hard truth of her new reality sets in. The heavy wooden doors of the Zenith Lodge swing open, letting in another violent gust of freezing mountain wind. The lead deputy does not handle Yvonne with any of the delicate reverence she expects from the world. He grips her securely by the upper arm and marches her right out the front entrance. Yvonne is kicking her expensive heels against the snow-covered stone steps, sobbing hysterically. Her shrill voice echoes through the thin mountain air, screaming about her reputation. She wails about what the senior pastor at her Atlanta megachurch will think when he finds out she was hauled away in the back of a police cruiser. I watch her emerald green silk dress disappear into the blinding swirl of the blizzard. The heavy doors slam shut, cutting off her frantic cries completely. The silence that instantly claims the grand foyer is absolute and suffocating. The flashing red and blue lights from the police vehicles outside continue to paint the walls, creating a rhythmic, chaotic pulse across the room. The catering staff has completely vanished into the kitchen, unwilling to witness another second of this catastrophic family collapse. Malik is still sitting on the floor, staring blankly at the wall, entirely broken by his wife's demand for a divorce. Ashley is weeping into her hands, mourning the brutal death of her fake aristocratic identity. And then there is DeAndre. My husband is standing a few feet away from me. The arrogant swagger, the booming investment broker voice, and the physical intimidation tactics have completely evaporated. He is sweating profusely. Thick beads of perspiration gather on his forehead and roll down his neck, soaking into the crisp collar of his custom dress shirt. His expensive velvet blazer suddenly looks heavy and ridiculous, like a costume he stole from a much better man. He looks wildly around the room, searching for an ally, searching for someone to blame, searching for an exit. There is no one left to save him. The remaining sheriff deputy stands near the entrance, his arms folded over his tactical vest, watching the scene with calm, professional detachment. The deputy knows the magnitude of the financial evidence I just handed over. He is simply waiting for my cue to proceed with the next arrest. DeAndre realizes this too. He realizes that his mother is currently sitting in the back of a squad car in handcuffs, and he is absolutely next in line. The crushing weight of the federal wire fraud, the forged military documents, and the stolen funds finally crashes down on his shoulders. Panic completely overtakes his features. He takes a slow, trembling step toward me. He raises his hands, palms facing outward in a gesture of surrender. The arrogant predator has vanished, replaced instantly by a cornered, desperate coward. "Aaliyah, please," DeAndre whispers. His voice is shaking, cracking under the immense pressure of his impending ruin. He takes another step closer, intentionally lowering his voice so the deputy by the door cannot hear him. He is trying to create an intimate private bubble between us, trying to resurrect a marital bond that he personally slaughtered. "Baby, listen to me," DeAndre pleads, forcing his eyes to well up with manufactured tears. "This has gone way too far. I know you are angry. I know you are hurt. You have every right to be upset about the garage. I swear to you, I did not know my mother put Layla out there. If I had known, I would have stopped her immediately. I would never let anything happen to our daughter." I look at him feeling absolutely nothing but clinical surgical disgust. He is actually trying to use my traumatized child as a bargaining chip to save his own skin. "We can fix this." DeAndre continues his words, tumbling out in a frantic, pathetic rush. "You are my wife, Aaliyah. We stood before God and made vows to protect each other. For better or for worse, remember. This is just a rough patch. I got in over my head with Malik's business debts and I panicked. I just wanted to provide a good life for our family. I wanted to give you the lifestyle you deserve. Just tell the officer you made a mistake with the audit logs. Tell him it was a marital misunderstanding about joint accounts. We can go home. We can go to counseling. I will pay back every single dime I took. Just please do not let them take me to jail." He reaches out as if to touch my shoulder. He wants to pull me into an embrace, to use physical affection to manipulate my nervous system. "Do not touch me." I state my voice, echoing with a low, dangerous frequency that stops his hand dead in the air. "Do not invoke God. Do not invoke vows that you broke the second my military transport left the runway. And do not ever let my daughter's name cross your lips again." DeAndre pulls his hand back as if he has been burned. His chest heaves, his eyes darting frantically around the room. He is drowning, and he knows it. "You think you were providing for me?" I ask, stepping forward, invading his space and forcing him to cower backward. "You drained a federal decoy account to buy a velvet blazer and fund a country club membership for a woman who hates my guts. You left my child shivering on a concrete floor to take a private jet to a house that I own. You are not a provider, DeAndre. You are a parasite." I do not wait for him to formulate another pathetic excuse. I reach into the side pocket of my cargo pants and pull out my encrypted smartphone. The screen illuminates my face in the dim lighting of the foyer. I unlock the device with a quick biometric scan. "Please, Aaliyah," DeAndre begs, his voice pitching upward into a genuine terrified whine. "What are you doing? Please stop." I ignore his pleas completely. I open the secure command portal linked directly to my private servers. The financial traps I set up while flying at 30,000 feet are fully armed and waiting for my final authorization. I see the green execute command pulsing on my screen. It is the digital trigger that will sever DeAndre from the modern financial world. I look up from my screen and meet his panicked eyes. "While you were drinking my champagne." "DeAndre," I say, my tone perfectly even and merciless. "I triggered a fraud alert on every single account you hold." I press my thumb against the execute button. The command transmits instantly through the encrypted server. The digital payload is delivered. For 2 seconds, the grand foyer is completely silent. Then the sound begins. A sharp, aggressive buzzing erupts from the inside pocket of DeAndre's velvet blazer. He flinches violently. Before he can even reach inside his jacket, a second notification chimes, then a third, then a fourth. The buzzing multiplies, turning into a continuous, frantic vibration. DeAndre pulls his expensive smartphone from his pocket with trembling hands. His eyes lock onto the glowing screen, and the last remaining drop of color drains from his face. He looks like a man watching his own execution in real time. The notifications are flooding his screen in a relentless, cascading waterfall of absolute financial destruction. Alert from his primary banking institution. Access denied due to suspected fraudulent activity. Alert from his platinum credit card provider. Account suspended pending federal investigation. Alert from his cryptocurrency exchange. Wallet frozen by regulatory mandate. But the alerts do not stop at his banking apps. A new notification pops up on his screen from his home security camera system back in Atlanta. DeAndre stares at the live video feed streaming directly to his phone. I know exactly what he is looking at because I orchestrated the entire sequence. What is happening? DeAndre whispers, his voice completely hollow, his eyes wide with sheer unadulterated terror. Why are there trucks in the driveway? Because you do not own anything, DeAndre, I reply, my voice cutting through his panic like shattered glass. You leased those luxury cars using my forged signature as a financial guarantor. The second I submitted the fraud report to the lending agencies, they initiated immediate recovery protocols. He watches the screen helplessly as two heavy-duty tow trucks back into the pristine driveway of his Atlanta suburban home. He watches the repo men hook thick metal chains to the front axle of his beloved custom Mercedes-Benz. He watches them secure the tires of his imported Range Rover. No, 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 DeAndre mutters, tapping his phone screen frantically, trying to open the security application to sound the alarm, as if yelling through a camera could stop a legal repossession. Your accounts are locked, DeAndre, I remind him, stepping closer so he can hear every single word clearly over the sound of his buzzing phone. You have no credit cards. You have no savings. You cannot call the bank to stop the repo men because the bank has already flagged your social security number for federal wire fraud. Your luxury cars in Atlanta are actively being repossessed right this very second, and you cannot do a single thing to stop it. He drops his phone. The device hits the hardwood floor with a dull thud, the screen still glowing brightly with the live feed of his vehicles being dragged away into the dark Atlanta night. DeAndre falls to his knees, the expensive fabric of his trousers soaking up the dirty melted snow pooling on the rug. He covers his face with his hands, his broad shoulders shaking as he finally realizes the inescapable totality of his ruin. DeAndre scrambles frantically on the wet Persian rug. His hands are shaking so violently he can barely grip the edges of his dropped smartphone. He ignores the live feed of his Mercedes being towed away and furiously swipes his thumb across the screen to close the security app. He is hunting for a lifeline. He navigates straight to the mobile application for his primary brokerage firm. This is the account he constantly brags about at family cookouts, the supposed bedrock of his elite investment career. I stand over him watching his sweaty thumb jab at the login button. A bright crimson banner slashes across his screen. The block text is unmistakable. Account frozen. Federal mandate. He chokes on a breath and frantically switches to his secondary banking app, the one he uses to funnel money to Malik. He types in his password with frantic, desperate jabs. Another red banner appears. Access denied. Contact Federal Fraud Division. He tries his cryptocurrency wallet. Locked. He tries his high-limit credit cards. Suspended. Every single digital vault he attempts to pry open slams shut in his face. I watch the absolute devastation hollow out his features. He is swiping and tapping with the manic energy of a drowning man clawing at the surface of a frozen lake. He has zero access to capital. He cannot buy a plane ticket. He cannot book a hotel room. He cannot even afford a cup of coffee at the airport terminal. In the span of 5 minutes, I have digitally severed him from the modern financial ecosystem. Malik stands frozen against the dining room archway, watching his younger brother rapidly unravel. The realization hits Malik like a physical blow. The bottomless well of stolen military money that kept his fake businesses afloat just dried up permanently. There will be no more bailouts, no more free rides. Malik looks at DeAndre not with brotherly concern, but with the sheer panic of a parasite that just lost its host. DeAndre drops the phone again. His shoulders slump forward and a pathetic whining sound escapes his throat. He looks up at me from his knees. The velvet blazer is ruin-soaked with dirty snow and sweat. The arrogant investment broker is entirely gone, replaced by a broken, terrified shell. I step closer, my combat boots stopping mere inches from his trembling hands. I slowly crouch down, bringing my face level with his. I do not raise my voice. I do not shout. I drop my tone into a low, dangerous register, ensuring that only he can hear the absolute finality in my words. You put my daughter in a freezing garage, I whisper, staring directly into his panicked eyes. You let your mother lay her hands on my child. You let her lock a 6-year-old girl in a concrete box in the middle of a winter cold snap just so you could fly across the country and play pretend. DeAndre opens his mouth to beg to offer another pathetic excuse, but I cut him off immediately. Now I am putting you in the cold, I state, my voice as sharp and unforgiving as a surgical blade. You have $0. You have no cars. You have no credit. And in case you were thinking of begging Malik for bus fare back to Georgia, you should know that you have no home either. DeAndre blinks rapidly, his mind struggling to process the barrage of tactical strikes. What are you talking about? He stammers, his voice barely a weak croak. Our house. The deed is in my name too. Not anymore, I reply smoothly. When I discovered what you did to Layla, I did not just book a flight to Aspen. I deployed a private contracting team to our suburban estate. They arrived an hour ago. They bypassed the security system you tried to lock me out of, and they changed every single physical lock on the property. The security codes have been wiped, your fingerprint access has been deleted, you are officially locked out of the house, you have absolutely nowhere to go. A profound heavy silence blankets the grand foyer. DeAndre stares at me, completely paralyzed. He finally understands the true scale of the battlefield he walked onto. He thought he was playing a game of domestic manipulation. He did not realize I wage war for a living. The lead deputy clears his throat, stepping forward to break the tension. He has given DeAndre enough time to comprehend the gravity of his situation, but the patience of law enforcement has expired. The deputy rests his hand firmly on his duty belt, projecting absolute authority. All right, listen up! The deputy announces, his voice projecting clearly across the vast room to include Malik and Ashley, who are still cowering near the dining table. The legal owner of this estate has clearly demonstrated that your lease is fraudulent. You are all trespassing on private property. You have exactly 10 minutes to gather yourselves and vacate these premises. If any of you are still standing inside this lodge when that clock runs out, you will be arrested and charged with criminal trespassing. Malik snaps out of his paralyzed state. 10 minutes, he protests, his voice pitching upward in panic. You cannot throw us out into a blizzard. We need time to pack our things. We have weeks' worth of luggage upstairs. We need to call a car service. Ashley scrambles up from the floor, desperately wiping the ruined makeup from her face. She practically sprints toward the grand staircase, already calculating how much of her designer wardrobe she can shove into her Louis Vuitton suitcases before the police physically remove her. I am not leaving my clothes behind. She snaps, her voice dripping with entitled venom, despite her completely ruined social standing. My jewelry alone is worth more than this entire town. I stand up slowly, brushing a speck of invisible dust from my tactical pants. I look at the lead deputy and offer him a calm, professional nod. Actually, officer, I say, raising my voice so it halts Ashley right at the bottom of the staircase. They will not be needing 10 minutes to pack. They will not be taking any luggage with them at all. Ashley freezes her hand gripping the carved wooden banister. She turns her head to glare at me, pure hatred flashing in her pale eyes. Excuse me, she spits out. You do not get to dictate what I take. Those are my personal belongings. I turn to face her squarely. Nothing you brought into this house belongs to you, Ashley. I walk over to the heavy mahogany dining table and pick up the stack of federal audit logs I presented earlier. I hand them back to the lead deputy, tapping a specific highlighted section on the second page. Officer. As these federal routing documents prove, every single luxury item in their possession was purchased using stolen military funds, I explain, keeping my tone entirely factual. The designer luggage upstairs, the expensive jewelry, the tailored suits, even the high-end electronics sitting on their nightstands. All of it was financed through a systemic embezzlement scheme targeting my federal decoy account. Since those items were acquired through documented wire fraud, they are classified as stolen property. I am officially flagging all physical assets currently inside this lodge as evidence of a federal crime. The lead deputy reviews the highlighted section of the audit. He looks up, taking in Ashley's expensive silk dress, Malik's gold watch, and DeAndre's custom velvet blazer. The deputy nods, understanding the legal reality of the situation perfectly. You heard the lady, the deputy commands, stepping firmly between the grand staircase and the panicked trespassers. You are not authorized to remove any property from this estate. Leave the luggage upstairs. Leave the electronics. If it was purchased with stolen money, it stays right here for the federal investigators. Ashley lets out a high-pitched shriek of absolute disbelief. "You cannot do this!" she screams, stomping her foot like a petulant toddler. "That is my property. You are stealing from me." "You stole from my daughter," I reply, my voice dropping to a frigid, terrifying calm. "You laughed while my mother-in-law locked a 6-year-old child in a freezing garage so you could come here and play rich. You are leaving this mountain with exactly what you brought to the table, which is absolutely nothing." Malik looks frantically at the front doors, hearing the violent howling of the aspen blizzard raging outside. "We do not even have our winter coats," he pleads, his voice shaking with genuine fear. "You cannot send us out there in this weather. We will freeze." DeAndre is still kneeling on the rug, staring at the floor, completely broken. The reality of the cold mountain air waiting for him outside is finally penetrating his state of shock. He is entirely stripped of his armor. His money is gone. His cars are gone. His home is gone. His family is fractured and turning on each other. And now he is being thrown out into a hostile winter storm with nothing but the thin, stolen clothes on his back. The deputy points a firm, commanding finger directly at the heavy mahogany front doors. "The clock is ticking," the deputy warns. "Move, now." The lead deputy does not repeat his command. He simply takes a firm step forward and places his hand squarely in the center of DeAndre's, back pushing him toward the threshold. DeAndre stumbles, his expensive Italian leather shoes slipping on the wet hardwood floor. He tries to catch his balance, but the sheer shock of his new reality has completely stripped him of his coordination. Malik scrambles toward the exit next, his eyes darting frantically around the grand foyer, as if hoping a secret escape hatch will magically appear. He practically trips over his own feet to avoid the stern glare of the second deputy. Ashley follows right behind him, but she is moving with the stiff, jerky motions of a woman entirely consumed by rage. She crosses her arms tightly over her thin silk designer dress, shivering violently before the freezing mountain air even touches her bare skin. She shoots me one final venomous glare, but I do not blink. I offer her a calm, satisfied smile. The deputies herd all three of them out onto the sweeping stone porch. The brutal aspen blizzard is completely unforgiving. The wind whips across Red Mountain Road in violent, aggressive gusts, driving thick sheets of snow directly into their faces. The heavy mahogany doors slam shut behind them, echoing with a massive, booming finality that rattles the crystal chandeliers in the dining room. I walk slowly towards the floor-to-ceiling windows facing the heated driveway. I cross my arms over my military parka and watch the absolute destruction of their toxic ecosystem unfold in real time. The temperature outside is well below freezing. DeAndre is standing in the snow, wearing nothing but his custom velvet blazer and thin dress trousers. The fabric offers absolutely zero protection against the harsh Colorado winter. He is shaking so violently that I can see his shoulders vibrating from behind the thick insulated glass. He fumbles in his pocket and pulls out his smartphone. His fingers are stiff and clumsy as he taps the screen, desperately trying to open a rideshare application. I watch him punch in a request for a luxury black SUV. He needs to escape this humiliation. He expects a heated car to magically appear and whisk him away from the consequences of his actions. I see the exact moment the application rejects his primary credit card. DeAndre's head snaps back. He frantically taps the screen again, switching his payment method to his secondary bank card. Denied. He tries a third card. He tries his corporate account. He tries a digital payment platform. Every single transaction is instantly, violently rejected. The federal fraud alert I triggered from my encrypted server has built an impenetrable brick wall around his entire financial existence. He cannot summon a luxury vehicle. He cannot even afford a basic economy ride. He is trapped on a freezing mountain with zero access to capital. Ashley realizes what is happening. She is standing a few feet away from him, her bare arms turning a blotchy shade of purple in the biting wind. Her expensive heels are sinking deep into the accumulated snow on the edge of the driveway, ruining the designer leather. She looks at DeAndre, tapping uselessly at his dead phone, and the final remaining shred of her fake aristocratic composure completely disintegrates. "You are completely useless." Ashley screams, her shrill voice piercing right through the thick window panes. She stomps her ruined heel into the snow, pointing a shaking manicured finger directly at DeAndre's face. You brought us out here playing pretend with stolen money, and now we are going to freeze to death on the side of a road. Call a car right now, DeAndre. Fix this. DeAndre looks up from his useless phone, his face twisted in a mixture of terror and humiliation. I cannot. He shouts back, his teeth chattering uncontrollably. The accounts are locked. She froze everything, Ashley. I cannot even order a cab. Ashley lets out a visceral, blood-curdling shriek of pure rage. She spins around and turns her absolute fury onto her husband. Malik shrinks back, instinctively raising his hands in a pathetic defensive gesture. The golden child who has been praised his entire life by his mother is now standing in a blizzard, facing the terrifying wrath of the woman he can no longer afford to impress. Do not look at me. Malik stammers, his voice cracking in the freezing wind. I did not know he was stealing from her. I thought his investment firm was paying for all of this. I am a victim here too, Ashley. A victim. Ashley spits out the word as if it is a physical poison. You are not a victim, Malik. You are a broke, pathetic loser. You have not had a real job in your entire life. You let your little brother pay for my country club memberships while you played golf and pretended to be a CEO. I married a man I thought was going places, and instead I married a giant toddler who lives off his mother's praises and his brother's stolen cash. Malik looks absolutely devastated. His chest heaves, his breath forming frantic white clouds in the freezing air. Ashley, baby, please, he begs, reaching out to grab her freezing arm. We will figure this out. My mother will hire a lawyer. We can fight this. Ashley violently shoves his hand away. Do not ever touch me again, she screams, her voice raw and ragged. Your mother is sitting in the back of a police cruiser facing felony forgery charges. Your brother is going to federal prison for wire fraud. I am not going down with your ghetto scam of a family. I am filing for divorce the second I get back to civilization. I want absolutely nothing to do with you, Malik. You disgust me. She turns her back on her husband, entirely dismissing 10 years of marriage in the span of 30 seconds. Ashley's loyalty was only ever tied to the depth of their bank accounts. The second the money evaporated, so did her vows. Malik stands frozen in the snow, his entire world collapsing around his ears. The woman he worshipped just publicly emasculated him and threw him away like garbage. The deep narcissistic injury shatters the fragile ego he spent decades building. He needs someone to blame. He cannot blame his mother, and he cannot blame his departing wife. He turns slowly toward DeAndre. DeAndre is still clutching his useless phone, shivering violently in his velvet blazer. He looks at his older brother, hoping for some shred of solidarity. They are supposed to be a team. They are the favorite sons. Malik closes the distance between them with heavy, aggressive strides. Before DeAndre can even open his mouth to speak, Malik lunges forward. He shoves DeAndre squarely in the chest with both hands, using every ounce of his body weight. DeAndre stumbles backward, wildly off balance. His expensive leather shoes completely give out on the icy driveway. He falls hard, landing flat on his back in a massive drift of freezing wet snow. The impact knocks the wind completely out of his lungs. He gasps, staring up at his older brother in total shock. This is your fault, Malik roars, standing over DeAndre with his fists clenched tightly at his sides. You arrogant, sloppy fool! You ruined my life! You promised me you had the money handled. You told me the military accounts were untraceable. You let her figure it out, and now I am losing my wife and my reputation because you could not control your own house. DeAndre struggles to sit up, his velvet blazer instantly soaked through with freezing water. Malik, I was trying to help you. DeAndre pleads, his voice pathetic and weak. I gave you everything. You gave me a federal indictment. Malik shouts, kicking a heavy spray of snow directly into DeAndre's face. You are on your own, DeAndre. Do not call me. Do not ask me for help. You are dead to me. You are. Malik turns away, leaving his younger brother sprawled in the freezing slush. He jogs awkwardly through the snow, desperately trying to catch up to Ashley. She is already marching down the steep incline of Red Mountain Road, her arms wrapped tightly around her shivering frame. They are heading toward the main highway, heading toward the public bus station, located 2 miles down the mountain. The golden child is reduced to chasing after a woman who openly despises him, trudging through a hostile blizzard without a winter coat. I stand quietly behind the thick, reinforced glass of the Zenith Lodge, watching them disappear into the blinding white storm. DeAndre is left entirely isolated. He is sitting in a snowdrift, shivering so hard his entire body is convulsing. He has no wife. He has no mother to protect him. He has no brother to validate him. He is utterly alone, surrounded by the freezing, brutal elements of a mountain he thought he conquered. He looks down at his wet, ruined clothes, and then slowly turns his head to look back at the grand estate. He knows I am standing right here. He knows I am watching him freeze. He knows he traded his beautiful, innocent daughter for this exact moment of absolute freezing devastation. The grand foyer of the Zenith Lodge is completely silent now. The heavy mahogany doors stand like an impenetrable fortress against the howling aspen blizzard outside. I turn away from the floor-to-ceiling windows and walk slowly into the massive living room. The sheer contrast between the brutal, freezing storm raging on the mountain and the absolute warmth inside my home is poetic. I walk over to the sprawling leather sectional where Layla is sound asleep. I pull a fresh, heated cashmere blanket from the warming drawer and tuck it gently around her small shoulders. Her breathing is deep and steady. The dark bruises on her arms are safely hidden beneath the soft fabric, but they remain the fuel burning inside my chest. She is safe. She is warm. And the people who tried to destroy her are currently fighting for their lives in the snow. I walk into the custom chef's kitchen and begin preparing a mug of hot cocoa. I move with deliberate calm, measuring the rich dark chocolate and heating the whole milk on the induction stove. I do not feel anxious. I do not feel any residual guilt or sadness for the man I married. When you spend your entire career in military cybersecurity hunting down hostile threats, you learn to compartmentalize. You learn to isolate a virus, quarantine the infected files, and hit delete without a single ounce of remorse. DeAndre is simply a deleted file. Exactly 63 minutes pass. The digital clock on the stainless steel oven reads just past midnight. A sharp melodic chime echoes through the quiet house. It is the automated alert from my perimeter security system. I pick up my steaming mug of hot cocoa and walk over to the central command tablet mounted on the stone wall near the entrance. I tap the screen, bringing up the high-definition night vision cameras positioned at the main iron gates at the bottom of the driveway. The thermal imaging sensors immediately lock onto a single erratic heat signature stumbling up the long, private road. I switch the feed to the primary optical camera. DeAndre is dragging himself toward the heavy wrought iron gates. The arrogant investment broker who flew here on a private jet just hours ago is completely unrecognizable. His expensive custom velvet blazer is stiff with frozen precipitation. The dark fabric is caked in dirty slush from where his brother Malik violently shoved him into the snowbank. He is not wearing a winter coat. He is not wearing gloves. He has his arms wrapped tightly around his own chest, shivering so violently that his entire body looks like it is convulsing. He stumbles against the stone pillar housing the security keypad and nearly collapses. He reaches out with a trembling, stiff hand and presses the intercom buzzer. The loud, persistent buzz rings through the lodge. I tap the screen, accepting the audio feed, but I intentionally keep my own microphone muted. I stand in the warm, glowing hallway, taking a slow sip of my hot cocoa, and I simply listen. Aaliyah. DeAndre begs, his voice cracking and distorted through the external microphone. The biting wind whips around him, drowning out his words, but his absolute desperation cuts through the static. Please, Aaliyah, I know you are watching the cameras. I know you can hear me. He presses his face closer to the intercom box. His teeth are chattering so loudly the audio receiver picks up the clicking sound. You have to let me inside. DeAndre pleads, his breath forming thick white clouds in the freezing air. Just for a few hours. Please. The public bus station down the mountain is locked. I tried to walk to the nearest hotel, but my shoes are ruined. I cannot feel my toes anymore, Aaliyah. My phone died. Every single one of my credit cards is declining. I am completely locked out of my bank accounts. I have absolutely nowhere to go. I watch his face on the high-definition monitor. He looks pathetic. The sense of entitlement that defined his entire existence has been brutally stripped away, leaving behind a terrified, hollow shell. He is freezing, and he is finally experiencing the exact same terror he inflicted upon my 6-year-old daughter when he allowed his mother to lock her in our concrete garage in Atlanta. I do not touch the microphone button. I let him suffer in the silence. I let the realization that he is entirely at my mercy wash over him. When begging for sympathy does not work, DeAndre predictably pivots to his next manipulation tactic. He attempts to shift the blame. "This was not my fault," DeAndre cries out, gripping the metal intercom box to keep himself upright. "It was my mother. You know how Yvonne is, Aaliyah. She manipulated me. She told me she had the rental secured. She is the one who forged your military identification. I did not know she stole it from your safe. I swear to you I did not know, and Malik pressured me for the money. He told me his business was going to fold if I did not wire him the cash. I was just trying to be a good son and a good brother. They used me, Aaliyah. They used my desire to provide for the family to drag me into this mess." I take another sip of my cocoa, letting the rich warmth slide down my throat. His ability to lie, even when he is freezing to death, is truly a clinical marvel. He was not a victim of his mother and brother. He was their willing accomplice. He funded Ashley's country club lifestyle because he wanted the proximity to her fake old money status. He bounced those checks because he wanted to sit at the head of the table and pretend he was a king. He sold out his own wife and stepdaughter for a seat in a social class that never even existed. "I know I messed up." DeAndre sobs, genuine tears finally freezing against his cheeks. "I know I broke our vows, but you cannot leave me out here to die in the snow. We are family, Aaliyah. You are my wife. I will do whatever you want." He presses both hands against the freezing iron gates, sinking to his knees in the deep snowdrift. "I will sign the divorce papers tomorrow morning." DeAndre bargains, his voice dropping into a frantic, pathetic whine. "I will not fight you on anything. You can have the house in Atlanta. You can have full custody of Layla. I will not ask for a single dollar in alimony. I will walk away, and you will never have to see my face ever again. Just please unfreeze one of my credit cards. Just transfer enough money for a plane ticket back to Georgia. Or just open the gate and let me sleep on the floor in the foyer tonight. I will sleep on the rug. Please, Aaliyah. Have some mercy." He drops his head against the cold metal, defeated, entirely broken by the mountain and by his own spectacular failure. He is offering me full custody of a child he never cared about, and promising to walk away from assets he never owned in the first place. He has absolutely no leverage, and he is trying to negotiate with phantom chips. I set my ceramic mug down on the sleek quartz entryway table. I step forward, bringing my face close to the digital wall monitor. I reach out and press my index finger firmly against the microphone icon. The green light flashes, indicating the two-way audio is now live. DeAndre hears the sharp click of the microphone engaging. His head snaps up. He stares wildly into the security camera lens, a desperate flicker of hope igniting in his freezing eyes. He really thinks his pathetic display of tears worked. He thinks the strong, protective military woman he married is going to swoop in and rescue him from his own consequences. "You left a note on my kitchen counter, DeAndre." I say, my voice projecting through the exterior speakers with absolute bone-chilling clarity. DeAndre freezes. The hope in his eyes instantly shatters, turning into sheer, unadulterated dread. "You left it right next to my expensive bourbon." I continue, keeping my tone surgical and completely devoid of any human empathy. "You wrote that you were taking everyone to Aspen. You wrote that my 6-year-old daughter was never family, and you told me to deal with her. Aaliyah, please." He whispers, a tiny, pathetic sound easily swallowed by the howling wind. I lean closer to the microphone. "You were right, DeAndre." I state, my voice ringing out across the frozen mountain estate. "She was never your family, and you were never ours. We are predators to men like you." I do not give him the opportunity to respond. I do not let him utter another single syllable of his worthless apologies. I lift my finger and press the master override button on the security console. I turn off the intercom system completely instantly, cutting off his audio feed and severing his last remaining tie to the warm living world. I watch the monitor in total silence. DeAndre falls forward, burying his face in the snow, his hands gripping the iron bars of my gate. He is completely isolated, locked outside in the freezing blizzard with no money, no family, and no future. A sudden flash of color on the edge of the security screen catches my eye. At the bottom of the long, winding driveway, the distinct, aggressive sweep of red and blue emergency lights reflects off the towering pine trees. Two Pitkin County Sheriff SUVs are pulling up directly behind DeAndre. I had digitally filed an emergency protective order and a formal trespassing complaint the exact second he buzzed the gate. The deputies step out of their vehicles, illuminating DeAndre with their harsh white spotlights. I watch as they pull him up from the snowbank. They do not offer him a warm blanket. They do not offer him a ride to the airport. They pat him down, turn him around, and place his wrists in standard-issue steel handcuffs. He does not even try to resist. He simply lets his head hang in absolute defeat as they secure him in the back of the freezing police cruiser. He is going straight to the county jail to await the federal marshals. I tap the screen, turning the security monitor off. The foyer plunges back into peaceful, quiet warmth. I pick up my mug of hot cocoa and walk back into the living room to sit by the crackling fire, taking my place beside my sleeping daughter. The storm outside rages on, but inside my walls the victory is absolute. 6 months have passed since the night the blizzard took everything from my former family. Time has a strange way of filtering reality, stripping away the lies until only the raw, jagged truth remains. For those who built their entire existence on the shaky foundation of appearances, 6 months has been an eternity of unrelenting consequences. Yvonne is currently occupying a bunk in a federal correctional facility in rural Georgia. Her 3-year sentence for wire fraud and forgery is far harsher than she ever anticipated. She is no longer the matriarch of the local megachurch. She is inmate number 4829, stripped of her designer wardrobe, her fake pearls, and her carefully constructed social standing. The church ladies who once scrambled to secure her a seat in the front pew now cross the street to avoid her name. They don't just ignore her, they treat her as if she never existed. Her letters to the church board pleading for financial support for her legal defense go unanswered. She has been deleted from their digital directory, airbrushed out of the community photos, and replaced by new, more compliant socialites who don't bring the heat of a federal conviction. Yvonne is finally learning the difference between people who worship a status and people who actually love a soul. The fallout for Malik and Ashley was even more public. Their divorce became the talk of the Atlanta real estate circuit. It wasn't just a breakup. It was a public bloodbath of finger-pointing and mutual destruction. Ashley, who once spent her afternoons bragging about her country club handicap, is now working the floor at a mid-tier retail store in a crowded suburban mall. Her designer clothes are long gone, sold to pay off her mounting credit card debts. She lives in a cramped apartment that smells of damp carpet and regret completely cut off by her wealthy parents. They don't even return her calls. They view her association with a fraudster as a stain on their lineage that they can never scrub clean. She is no longer the princess of old money. She is just another customer service representative clocking in for an 8-hour shift, wearing a name tag that hides the truth of who she used to be. Malik is in a worse position. His business partners abandoned him the moment the wire fraud investigation became public. He had no skills beyond leveraging other people's money and no personality beyond the charisma he used to sell lies. Without his mother's enabling or his brother's stolen funds, Malik is discovering that he is utterly incapable of basic adult survival. He is currently working as a gig economy driver navigating the same city streets he once toured in leased luxury cars. He avoids the country clubs where he once stood as a titan of industry. He knows that if he shows his face there, he will be laughed out of the building. DeAndre is currently sitting in a cold Stark County jail cell, waiting for his federal trial to commence. Because I triggered the fraud alert and froze every single asset he had, he does not have a dime to his name. He is represented by a court-appointed public defender who is juggling 200 other cases and barely has time to review DeAndre's file. The man who used to fly private jets to Aspen and demand the best champagne is now lining up for lukewarm cafeteria slop and wearing a generic orange jumpsuit. He doesn't have the tailored velvet blazer or the custom shirts anymore. He has a concrete slab for a bed and the constant crushing realization that he chose a weekend of vanity over the life of his own child. He writes letters to my attorney demanding I drop the charges, promising he has changed, begging for a single phone call. I don't even open the envelopes. I have the prison warden forward them directly to the federal prosecutors as further evidence of his manipulative nature. While the empire of lies has crumbled, my world has expanded. Layla is thriving. The bruises on her arms have faded completely, leaving behind a smooth, healthy skin that she loves to show off when she helps me in the kitchen. She is enrolled in an elite private academy in Colorado that specializes in gifted education for art and science. She is happy. She laughs with a genuine, unburdened sound that fills the lodge with a music I never thought I would hear again. She is a 6-year-old girl who loves the snow and doesn't know what it means to be afraid of the garage. I am sitting on the deck of my Zenith Lodge, wrapped in the same heavy parka I wore that night. The morning sun is beginning to crest over the jagged peaks of the Rocky Mountains, turning the snow into fields of glittering diamonds. It is a peaceful morning, the kind I once thought was reserved for people who didn't live in constant, crushing anxiety. I reach over to the small mahogany table and open my laptop. My primary email inbox is a quiet, manageable space. There are no urgent threats from creditors, no frantic messages from my mother, no demands for money. My consulting firm, which I have transitioned into a full-scale cybersecurity agency, is operating at peak efficiency. I have hired a team of brilliant, dedicated analysts who understand the value of integrity and hard work. A notification chime rings sharp and clear against the morning air. It is an email from the Department of Defense. I click on it, my breath steady, my heart rate calm. The subject line reads, Official Promotion Director of Pentagon Cybersecurity Operations. I read through the details. It is the highest level appointment I have ever received. It comes with a significant salary increase, a team of 40 specialists, and the authority to shape national security infrastructure. It is the final answer to every insult DeAndre, Yvonne, and Ashley ever hurled at me. They called me a military charity case, an outsider, a burden. They thought they could diminish me because I served my country in a uniform rather than a designer dress. I look up from the screen to watch Layla building a lopsided snowman on the patio. She looks up, waves at me, and beams a wide, gap-toothed smile. The scapegoat didn't just survive. I didn't just crawl out of the garage. I systematically dismantled the people who tried to bury us. I bought the slaughterhouse, I walked through the fire, and I changed every single lock. I close the laptop, pick up my mug, and lean back into the comfortable chair. I have finally arrived at the life I was always meant to live. It isn't just success, it is absolute, unshakable security. For the first time in my life, I am not waiting for anyone's permission to be exactly who I am. The Zenith Lodge is quiet, the world is at peace, and for once the future belongs entirely to us. The greatest lesson from this ordeal is that true security never comes from conforming to toxic expectations. When people show you their true colors, especially in how they treat your children, believe them instantly. We are often taught to shrink ourselves to fit into broken families, tolerating abuse just to keep the peace. But true resilience means building your own fortress. Financial independence and unshakable boundaries are your strongest weapons. You never have to beg for a seat at a table when you possess the power to buy the entire house and permanently change the locks. Have you ever had to walk away from toxic relatives to protect your peace? Share your story in the comments below and hit subscribe for more empowering journeys.